very much. It's very good to be here. And I'm so happy that Greeks, Armenians, and Assyrians are in the same room together. As you know, most of you know, as Sam just told you, my mother is a Pontic Greek, my father was Assyrian. And I met a young woman, an Armenian girl, who comes from Turkey recently, in Sarajevo. And she said, because my aunt was Armenian, and the people that rescued my mother were Armenians. And she said, Thea, you're 50% Pontian, 50% Assyrian, and 50% Armenian, and that makes you 150%. In 1922, Reverend Ralph Harlow described a conversation he had with Theodore Roosevelt. And Theodore Roosevelt, he said, the greatest regret that I have as I look back on my administration is the fact that when the awful Adana massacre occurred, this government did not take steps against the outrage on civilization. Jump ahead 80 years, and we have President Clinton saying, I'll always regret that Rwanda thing. I guess he's talking about the Rwanda genocide. I guess that's his way of saying genocide. I will always feel terrible about it. Now we have Darfur, and President Bush and the UN has designated it as a genocide, but of course they do nothing meaningful about it to stop it. And we have Tibet. And of course, since the US is indebted to China for over $1 trillion for their invasion, to support their invasion of Iraq, we're hardly in a position to tell China what to do, and we're hardly in a moral position anymore to tell anybody what to do about genocide around the world, and so it continues. I was just given this wonderful book that I know parts of, and in it, Edward Hale Bierstadt, I want to read part of a quote from his book. The nations want oil because oil means money, and because it may well prove to be a deciding factor in another war. The minorities, the Armenians, and the Ottoman Greeks were either dead or in exile, destitute, naked, and starving. And the public of America was straining every nerve for their relief. But in the face of this, our representatives at Hussein was instructed to negotiate an economic treaty with Turkey. One of the only weapons we have as citizens of the world is to make sure, at least, that history is recorded accurately and to expose the atrocities that governments commit around the world. My mother comes from a small village in Pontus. She lived a very happy life, she said, surrounded. Her villages were all Greek, but they were surrounded by Turkish villages. And she said they lived side by side with the Turks and helped each other by bartering. But in the summer of 1920, in the spring of 1920, Turkish soldiers came and banged on the doors with the butts of their rifles and ordered the 3,000 inhabitants of Iron Dome to pack only what they could carry and leave that place. My mother had a sister, Christodula, who was 12, and a brother who was about 8. A younger sister named Nastasia, who was around 4 at the time, and then 2 twin sisters, Maria and Mathia, who were 4 months old. My mother was around 9 when they left the village. Christodula carried Maria on her back, and my mother carried Mathia on her back. And I want to read you just a passage of my book. This is chapter 19, Babies and Mothers. Each day Mathia was heavier on my back, and my clammy long-sleeve dress, thick with dust and perspiration, stuck to me like wet glue. With each passing day, Mother seemed more debilitated, perhaps from the extra strain of nursing the twins without proper food or water. At the edge of a small town, there was a water fountain, with water flowing continuously, spilling its cool treasure into a stone bowl, then overflowing onto the ground, turning the stones around it black. I had never seen Mother so in need of anything before. She had always been the graceful, patient jewel the Turks rightly named Gazelle. But Mother left the file to stumble to the fountain. The exiles stopped and watched expectantly, ready to race to the fountain also, if she succeeded in her quest. But just before she reached she reached it, a Turkish soldier trotted up on his horse, spitting out commands. He raised his whip and gave her a lash, like one would an ox or a donkey. She fell to her knees as my feet rooted to the ground and my heart split open. Father threw down his bundles and ran to her. Water, please, Mother said to the soldier. Father tried to raise Mother to her feet. Please. The soldier raised his whip again, spitting out more abuse. He would have hit her again, but Father threw his arm around her shoulder and pulled her away. The disappointment on the marchers' dirt-streaked faces was barely noticeable. It was more like numbness that showed in their eyes, the numbness that comes from deprivation and prolonged defeat. Mother stumbled back to her place as the others turned like robots to continue their march. Was it on that day that little Maria died? I don't remember. I only remember her little body tied to Christodula's back like a papoose, her little head bobbing back and forth, and the realization that something was wrong gripped up my hot body with a cold, clammy panic. Mama, I said as calmly as I could, hoping my calmness would make everything all right. Maria looks funny. Mother looked up and burst into tears. Maria's face had turned ashen. Her eyes stared out at nothing like little doll eyes that were broken in the open position, and her head rolled back and forth with each step. What's wrong, Christodula demanded in a panic. What is it? We stopped in the road like a pile of stones in a river. The weary exiles ruptured out around us and continued their march. Mother took Maria from Christodula's back and cradled her in her arms as her tears washed Maria's lifeless face. Move, a soldier shouted as he trotted up to where we stood. My baby, Mother said. She held out Maria for the soldier to see as if her shock and grief could also be his. My baby. Throw it away if it's dead, he shouted. Move. Let me bury her, Mother pleaded, sobbing. Throw it away, he shouted again, raising his whip. Throw it away. Mother clutched Maria's body to her breast as we stood staring up at him. Her face was gripped with a torment I had never seen before. Father reached for Maria, to put her down, I suppose. But Mother clutched her even more tightly. Then she walked over to the high stone wall that separated the road from the town and lifted Maria up to lay her on the wall's top, as if on an altar before the Almighty. That night, Mother cried herself to sleep, and each time I closed my own eyes, I saw her holding Maria up to the heavens like an offering. The image of her lifeless body lying there on the stone wall, like some gift in a pagan ritual, followed me even into my dreams and all through the next days. Each time I thought of my little sister, left lying there alone in the burning sun, with the buzzards flying about waiting for us to pass, the tears would come without my ability to control them. Such was the fate of my parents and my mother, and millions of other Greeks, Armenians, and Assyrians between 1914 and 1923. One of the overriding similarities in the attempt to bring the Armenian genocide to light was the almost complete failure of the academic and institutional